One of the most exciting thing about being investor in Palantir is the community that it is building around it. And in order to continue the tradition, I am very excited to invite CyberFam for a fireside chat to discuss about Palantir today. CyberFam has a strong background in DevOps and is constantly integrating with people who are in the trenches deploying big data OS for different companies. His viewpoint is unique in the Palantir community, the kind of insights he brings in. I'm very excited that he's joining us today. I would recommend you guys should go and check his YouTube channel CyberFam and his Twitter account. He goes by the handle @OGCyberFam. Hey guys, this is Sachin and welcome to IndustriaNX, and today we have the guest CyberFam. We are connected over Twitter and YouTube, and we are part of Palantir community, and so we thought I think let's get together and have a free-flowing discussion on some of the things related to Palantir and overall what is going to happen or what is happening in general in the digital and data industry overall. So I think CyberFam, why don't you introduce yourself and just give your background a bit for the help to help our viewers?
Yeah, sure. Sachin, thanks for inviting me, first of all. I've been meaning to sort of like reach out to you and stuff, so really glad that you reached out and we can do this, firstly. But secondly, my name is Shabri. I'm my YouTube channel is CyberFam. And traditionally, I started off as a software engineer, building apps and stuff. But more recently, in the past 5-6 years, it's been mainly doing things like DevOps and site reliability engineering work. But what that really means is I'm just handling a lot of the infrastructure and sometimes even the being an architect for some of these projects and stuff. But lately, on the consulting side, it's been hired for that, and then because I charge hourly, they'll start tossing all sorts of tasks and stuff like that to make the best use of my time. So a lot of that has been, oh hey, can you be the technical, can you be part of the technical team or lead the discussion with people and companies we're onboarding, and sort of like start from there, because most companies are smart enough to understand that nothing works out of the box. So that's been kind of my role so far. So when basically my channel is that cross or overlapping with my investment journey, which really only started around like 2018-19 when things really took a big change in my life and I started to come across a lot of money where I can put away. Before that, it was quite literally quite difficult to put that away. So I started to do research. I'm a strong believer of research. I think especially when you go to invest, I know we're in YOLO culture and everyone just goes crazy with their investments, but for me, that wasn't an option. I really had not much to put away. So I'm like, okay, this thing needs to, this thing has got to be my baby. I got to take care of it and make sure that, it goes where it needs to go. So I spent 6, 7, I think almost a full year doing research. So I wanted to get in on Tesla and all that stuff before, but I totally missed that whole beginning part. But I was okay doing that because I wanted to do some research first, make sure that I know what I'm doing. Of course, when you get into some of these companies now with Palantir, tons of FUD everywhere. So I wanted to make sure I had like a FUD deflector and good, some good scopes on to make sure that I know what I'm doing there. So it all started there. And of course, we know where Tesla went. And in 2017, I was really interested in Palantir because I took a trip to California to visit my cousins. And we were just having some discussions about tech, and Palantir had come up, and we were just talking about like what it did. And even at that time, I was like, wait, but then like, aren't they very similar to this another company? And then I started looking into them further, and based on just what they were doing and what the small content they were putting out, even then I could clearly see what the difference was. So I was like, man, I can't wait till this company gets public, because it's going to be a sleeping giant. Like no one's going to understand what this is, and that's going to be my time to buy it because no one gets it. And then I got in pretty much a whole bunch at direct listing, and I've been buying ever since. So yeah, that's where we are today, I think.
No, that makes sense. I think my journey for Palantir actually started when I came to know about company long back with some of my friends in Silicon Valley. My interest peaked when BP made quite a significant investment in Palantir, and that was quite strange, and there were reasons for that. Because what I understood from the public sources, that the amount of money that BP invested, that was over a period of like 10 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And even if I annualize that much money over a single year, that was bigger than any deal happened in oil and gas industry, including the largest players on the service side versus the largest players on the produce side. There was no deal happened in terms of, I mean, BP was using the deal was meant for data analytics, data
Hmm.
mining for their own data, digital twins, and all that. Even if I club other services of digital and data that is done in the reservoir characterization and software, still no company has ever made a deal of that amount. So the
Okay.
normal
Gotcha.
curiosity was like what this company is doing, what value it is going to deliver to BP, why BP is after them. I mean, for a time being, I was very surprised, like why they were not able to sell a lot of other clients in energy sector. Only, I mean, earlier this year, I not like earlier last year, I came to know that there was an exclusivity agreement. So
Okay.
when BP invested the money, there was an exclusivity agreement that they cannot work with other players in the competitive domain after. So BP went with them. They invested heavily, and in 2014, BP was not looking that much. I mean, not BP, like whole oil and gas sector was not looking for renewables that much. I mean, it was something that will happen in a long time. But you
Yeah.
saw, like when I mean BP made a move towards the renewable and a low carbon future, they eventually extended the scope of Palantir. So this is to me, this became a kind of a testament. And I mean, I get to see a lot of people in the company, get to talk to them. I have
Yeah.
spent my time with CDOs who have executed the projects where Palantir, I mean, was the main solution that has been implemented. I have been on the other side where Palantir was being evaluated in several projects. I have met
Yeah.
uh, in several business settings few of the people from Palantir. So I get to know about the company, and of course, like I was leading a digital strategy for a while. I did a lot of digital transformation projects, so I had a view on things, and this is where my view kind of evolved over the time. And I always find that this company has a better fit to it. So that's
Yeah.
how my thinking about the Palantir evolved.
Okay. Okay. It all things considered, I think you put out like the content you put out is honestly very underrated. I think hopefully we can change that and get some more viewers on so that we get some more constructive discussions, because I think even for me, like watching your stuff, I learn a lot. People have this misconception that software engineers will automatically just understand Palantir. It's quite a complicated company and stuff, right? But the things you put out are so very like curated and specific, and you get to a point. So I enjoy your content a lot. So thanks for doing that.
I appreciate, Ben, and same here. I mean, I'm watching most of your videos and enjoying your content as well. And you bring a very different dimension that people like myself cannot bring. I mean, you are right in the trenches, so you know things which I don't.
Fair enough.
So I really appreciate that. So I think this is one of the big thing, and I'm surprised that we are even discussing it. But uh, see what happened in last few months or over a year. I mean, the stock price has plummeted a lot,
Yeah.
and despite everyone claims to be the next Buffett, people are
Right.
still, they do the same things over and over. So this is where, I mean, the discussion is coming is, okay, you like Palantir, you don't like Palantir, that is one thing. But I'm really surprised when people say what Palantir does,
Yeah.
because okay, I cannot touch Palantir, but there is enough evidence and enough information for me to understand what Palantir does. So I think that's where we should start the discussion is what is Palantir. And I
Yeah.
mean, I would like to know that how do you see Palantir? Like, what do you think Palantir is doing? And just in a very, very layman terms.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, the funny thing is, to start off, everyone always thinks Palantir is quite complicated of a company. Sure, right? But the reality of it is the actual mission of what they're trying to do, and the goal of where they're trying to go is actually quite simple. And I think that's part of the reason why people don't fully understand it. Um, what they're really doing, right, at the very end of it, if you break it down from a very component level, is just they're trying to make sure that the human decision making process, which happens in every company, it's not like this is some new thing that they're trying to address, right? But they're trying to make sure that that is the best informed it's going to be, and it's not based on some speculation. It's based on their own operations, like the company's own operations, and that, because at the end of the day, a company is really just day-to-day decisions of workers that are being made, right? So when you optimize that from a very fundamental level, then by design, your company's just going to grow and grow and grow. So from a very basic perspective, they're just trying to address what people already do in companies and make it more informed based on their own sort of data collection and their own company ethos and all that stuff. Because what's the point of a company collecting data and doing all sorts of stuff, that due diligence and all these things that they already do, if you're not going to use that to make yourself better, right? So fundamentally, just from a very basic, if you ask somebody what to do, they just make your decision-making process better, and they do it through means of going through your own sort of processes and logs and data and helping you make that decision yourself almost. So it sounds a little vague and broad, but maybe that's because it actually is. It's actually quite big of a problem, and this is probably why people don't understand it, because they're like, they can't just do that simply, right? That's too simple of an issue. It sounds so basic, but it's actually quite a big problem, because this is what this plagues companies everywhere, right? This exact reason, lots of salaries get wasted, lots of time gets wasted, lots of data gets wasted. So this is actually quite a large problem. So I know they're trying to hit it like a quite a small target, but from I think they'll be able to reach that moving forward.
I think that's very helpful. I mean, my understanding of Palantir is, and as I shared, I think let me see if I can share my screen from here.
Yeah,
this is first time for me on the StreamYard, so I can be a bit choppy. So in general, like what is happening is what I saw. I mean, overall. So there is one thing which I heard a lot, that it's a consulting company. See, I work for Tier 1 consulting company, so I can say for certainty that it is not a consulting company. Okay, I mean, it's a SaaS company that I always maintained. Okay, I mean, the way it has evolved is a bit different, because what is happening in Silicon Valley, that companies start a lot of time in B2B and B2C domain, but in the case of Palantir specifically started with government. Okay, and I think one thing which is very important is that that their focus is more on turning data into information. I think that is the simplest way to look at it. How they do it, in which use cases they are doing it. I think that's, people can have different views about it. But now what is happening in industry in general that I see is that either you do it yourself, you put these pieces together and hoping that you build some value out of it. And when I was doing some research to understand that why there is this rush of do-it-yourself solution. So this is what my learning came out of it. Like before this whole digital transformation thing started, in large industrial setting, the IT used to be a support function.
Yep.
Okay, now then suddenly, like when the digital transformation started, the IT became the core of the business operation. So these people have been simply elevated in that role. Okay. And then there was a phase when companies started hiring people. Okay, people from digital background, and this is where a lot of people from big tech has been hired in a lot of different roles in different companies, and they came from a culture where they need to build solutions. So their initial frame was, okay, this is a problem, we will build product A to solve this. And people who were on the management side and people who were in the company, they had no clue, okay, that is this the right thing to do. And then another thing happened is, like, for example, several industries went into crisis. For example, I used to work for oil and gas, and that went into crisis. So when you are in a crisis industry, everyone is trying to survive. And this is exactly what happened in these kind of situation, is that a lot of people in the company starts walking as a digital expert.
Right.
So if you are a digital expert by your declaration, and I'm a digital expert by declaration, I honor your opinion and you honor my opinion, and we both maintain our persona.
Right.
So this kind of fake thinking and kind of yield to this kind of euphoria. And this is another reason that a lot of do-it-yourself solutions have failed, because people had a view, but they didn't have a view on the technology and the business problem end to end. And this is where I think
I have lots of stories here. I've been part of this do-it-yourself business transformations for pretty much my entire career, so I can definitely speak to that. But on that point, Sachin, the the key takeaway here is, I know I tried to simplify like what Palantir does for the most part, but again, like to mention, that's because that what they're doing is actually quite simple to understand in terms of the end goal. The thing that for me though is not what they're doing that is important here. It's how they're doing it, because that's always been the problem. So you're talking about business transformations, and you touched on a very, very sensitive part there. In business transformations, at least in my experience, there are so many different things that can go wrong from day one, and one of the bigger things are actually ego. So like one of the bigger things are, for example, like you're talking about the picking of technology, right? That is quite an understatement, honestly, because what happens is you get into these meeting rooms and you waste months just deciding on how or which like code base to pick, which is so stupid, because most of these things actually do similar things. Like if you want to write code in Python or whatever, Java, who cares, right? Pick something and let's move on, kind of thing. But the problem is everybody's got their opinions, everybody's got their egos, and it's funny because at the end of Palantir's journey, they're trying to address this human decision-making process. But the funny thing is that's what is helping them make their business better, because the human decision-making process is what's causing all these cumbersome like processes to suck, really, in right now in business transformations, right? So just from a people problem all the way to a tech problem, all the way to a integration problem, all that stuff happens by the time you build anything. I know. So in 2017, this is exactly what I did. So I got hired at this company. It was a data center company, right? And they had a whole bunch. They were logging tons of data from every single thing that they were doing, which is basically what every company does, and that's fine. So they were saying, okay, we have a whole bunch of data lakes and all these databases. We need you to basically build a whole like microservice architecture, like platform or some kind of product that can connect our finance team to Salesforce, and connect Salesforce to this, and basically it was a whole nest of stuff. We did it, actually. That's the funny thing. We did it, but then people start, nickel and diming you on, oh, what about this? What about this? So half the time, I think this entire space is ripe for someone to just come in and say, here's a product, just use it, right? Because Palantir, if you just look at it from their videos that they're putting out, right? It's such an easy, simple. I think they even put it on their website that they're trying to make the user experience much smoother, right? That's the problem. Whenever people want to go out do this kind of work, right? They think it's so complicated, so then they're expecting a complicated product. Like they're expecting a product that has, 5,000 buttons and all these fields. And I don't know if have you seen ServiceNow, Sachin?
Yeah.
You know how there's like 1,000 different things on the left side, and there's like, when you click one thing, there's 100 fields for every, it's very customizable, but it's very confusing. You need like a whole quarter of training to just use that thing, right? So whereas Palantir, they come in and they make everything very seamless. Like, I think to be honest, they might have some kind of psychologist sitting there and actually going through the stuff and seeing what gives people anxiety or something. But just from that perspective, I think it's just from that, I think they'll be able to succeed, because the industry definitely needs someone to come in and say, here's a product, it's easy to use, please go ahead and use it, right? It's almost like the whole like Mac OS, which started helping Windows get better too. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I mean, this is where, when I interacted with the company and I wanted to understand that what is the real value.
Yeah.
And as I understand, the real value is that is a time to value. That means you have a business problem, how fast you want to solve it, how effectively you want to solve it, and how sustainable your solution or robust your solution over a longer term. I mean, it's not like you solved a portion of it, but tomorrow the situation changed and now you need to build a new solution. And this is where I find it very different from a lot of solutions I came across. So that's the next part. I mean, one thing is that, okay, people don't understand Palantir, and to be fair, I really don't know why people don't understand Palantir, because there is so much information. I mean, people know what kind of work they are doing, at least under some codes with US government. People have seen the client testimony that has been given by companies like Airbus, and so many other clients have said like how Palantir has actually impacted the organization and the culture and how the work is done. And so sometimes the question comes is like, okay, do people really, these people who say that they don't understand company, okay, their interpretation is wrong, or are they just not competent enough, or there are reasons which are,
I don't know,
which are not technical or investing. But yeah, I mean, that's so I really do not have any sympathy with anyone who says that I don't understand Palantir. I mean, of course you don't understand, you ask questions, and Somebody asks question, I answer, and then he says, I still don't understand. And then you answer again, and then you say, I still don't understand. So my answer to everyone of them is, then only God can help you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go invest in
That's
Google or
beyond
Microsoft.
my ability, and why don't we see you on the other side? So the next part is, okay, people who understand Palantir, the question is it really a unique company? Okay, I have my own reasons that why I think it's a unique company.
Yeah.
But the question is that now this is subjective. I mean, I can think it's unique in different ways, people, but is it really a unique company? And unique company, when we are talking in this context, is something that is going to have a significant impact on how business is carried across in a major in a major sector, in a major portion, and the company can generate a lot of meaningful revenue moving forward.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it can become one of the giant in the tech industry. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's 100% unique, and I'll tell you why. Again, part of the problem is Palantir is actually doing something very basic. They're not actually doing anything complicated, but people don't understand it because there's so many different things that come into play. They're like, oh, they're doing something basic, but then their valuation, blah, 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 all these different things. I think they're just not thinking about it properly. But in terms of the uniqueness, to look at Palantir as to why they're unique, you almost have to take a step back and look at everyone else. The reason for that is being, and to be very frank, like I've seen, I've talked with guys from Microsoft. I did speak with one guy from Salesforce, but that was some time ago. But this isn't a thing that companies have not tried. It's not like, it's not like these incumbents have not seen this kind of problem. The issue is the stuff that they've tried, it goes against their current business model, in my opinion. So what's happening is in the current IT and SaaS and all these kind of like worlds, right? They'd rather listen to their clients, see what kind of problems they have, go back and then make a product to fix that problem. So they're betting. So right now, all these companies are betting on the fact that there will be one or two, maybe a small set of underlying problems that basically touch all of these companies, right? And then they'll say, okay, we'll build a platform or we'll build some kind of product that addresses this major problem, but then all of the minor stuff, all the nuances of your personal company's operations and all these different things, they won't address. So when you go get a CRM product or when you go to get an ERP product, right, it'll do all the same things that every other company that's struggling with your problem, it'll fix that. But then for anything else, you got to go through their professional services or you got to go through their consulting or whatever the case is, right? So whereas Palantir has taken this, they're not addressing one company or a company's sort of like underlying problems. Instead, they're addressing the problem to begin with, which is the data down, right? So they're going a level up, right? So these companies are saying, okay, our current operations are being encumbered by XYZ problem, and then there's this, we have so many departments and the structure and blah blah blah. But that's all actually a subset of the data side, right? They're already collecting data. So the Palantir is like, look, we don't care about that. You fix your own operation problem, okay? But we'll take your data and tell you how you can get better, right? So they're going a step above, almost like one step back, and then they're saying, okay, this is what we're seeing from your data side of it, and why don't we just skip all of your BS that you can solve yourself, and let's get to the actual problem of it, which is you're not making the right decisions to grow your company, right? So in a way, that's why they're unique, because for one, it's not like people have not tried this. It's just that Palantir actually has a product out there that does it. Like, it's hard in IT world. It's hard, first of all, to get people in one meeting room together, okay? Because everyone has different opinions and all this stuff, right? That's why you need a mission. You need like somebody to drive the bus. You can't just, or else the meeting rooms just become buses with no drivers, right? But what happens is to actually front a product that actually works and does this is like, that's product maturity at its absolute finest. Most of the time, these companies will they'll front a product that does one or two things. They'll have a pilot program where they'll onboard some clients. They'll say, okay, this is good, and they'll basically put it in flight, and then they won't address 90 other problems that other companies have, right? So the cycling, like the product cycle, is very closed in that way. But Palantir is like, okay, if we take a step back and we take at it from like a megaphone angle, where we're taking a small sort of thing in this whole enterprise, and this small thing just happens to affect everything else, all the way down to the end decision making. That's unique. And to actually have a product out there that caters to that and actually does that is even more unique, because I don't think anyone has that at all. right? They all have small subsets of it. They all have these products where they see that that's an issue, so they try to sneak it in there. Like Power BI is a fantastic product, right? Snowflake Data Lake and all these things, they're good products. It's not that they're bad products, but they focus on a narrow problem, and then they maybe try to add some stuff. They're like, hey, you know, we have some automated helpers and stuff like that, some optimization stuff you can use. But at the end of the day, it's not. It does just that one thing. So just from that
No,
angle,
I
I
agree.
think,
I totally agree.
yeah, I think it's very unique. It's
Yes.
it's so unique. Like I don't understand. This bugs me. I know what bugs you is why Palantir, you know, why people don't understand Palantir. What bugs me is why people don't understand why it's unique. Like look at the product. If and this is funny because I have people in my comment sections that are like industry people, right? They're like, no way, you know, Palantir is never going to compete with Amazon and stuff. Like, dude, just look at it. They post their actual product on YouTube videos. Like that's just from a UI perspective. Forget anything else. Just from a user experience perspective, it is going to crush everything because they're catering to the people that make the decisions, not the people that think they make the decisions, right? But anyway,
I think the things I know is like, for example, I will not name the big tech, but I mean, I talked to a lot of people in industry, and I asked their experience about it, and so a lot of big tech experience with people is actually not great.
yeah,
Like a lot of solutions are being there. So one of the things which I realized with Palantir was that first is that when I started looking, and I was doing a part of this as a part of some research, that what are the different components in big data OS, and what actually companies are trying to do. So at this particular point, you know, everyone knows on surface that this is how we are going to use the data.
yeah,
Okay. The second is that the companies have been so bad in managing the data that at this particular point, even if you can put it together and get it in some visible form, you will get some value out of it.
yeah,
Okay, and people get this value and they get excited about it, that we have realized the value of data.
yeah,
The next is that as we are moving forward, and as the 5G and the SpaceX Starlink come, the advent of more edge AI, IoT devices come,
yes,
the frequency and the amount of data that is going to flood the industry is also going to be different. So a lot of people in the industry I talk to, they actually don't know what Palantir does.
yeah,
Oh, when I talk to them and I discuss with them, and there is actually there is an example I heard from one of the Palantir employee at one point of time, and I share with them like what kind of work they do. They say, oh, I don't know about it, and then I share some videos with them, and they say, oh, they don't know. That the challenge they find is like, even if I share that information, but there is no follow up in terms of sales call and all. I mean, there's a call to action that is missing sometimes.
yeah.
And
You know, part of the
this is
problem.
where
No,
so
sorry,
this is
sorry.
where I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So this is where one of the thing and this is where I always maintain that execution is something that
Yeah.
Palantir growth is self-constrained. They are not able to grow more because of their own constraint rather than market constraint.
No, absolutely. And you know, the part of the problem too, Sachin, is there's a disconnect, right? Even for me, like I can talk to people on the engineering side of it, and like the people on my side, they'll want to add all sorts of functionality, features, and stuff, right? This is why engineers can't be the only people that build products. You need people like you know, UX people that say, okay, no, listen, this is too much. You know, this is going to overwhelm people. But I think the issue you're addressing a very key issue here. You're like, even when you speak to people, right? Yes, you speak to the people that make the decisions, but they might not be speaking to the people that actually go through the process of making the decisions internally. I'm talking about like the actual decision making for the pipelines and stuff like that. The analysts, for instance. I know Palantir uses analysts as the term, but you know what I mean, like the foot soldiers, right? They actually use the product. They might not be in tune with them, and this is very often sometimes the case. For most of the companies, except for maybe 2 companies that I've worked for, the guys who actually make the decisions are making the decisions based on their own mind, and then they're thinking that the people, you know, below them or beneath them will actually be able to use this whatever product that they onboard. They don't actually know. They don't speak to them and say, okay, like what problems do you have in your day-to-day task, and how could we help, and what do you think, you know, we could do? Like, give me a list of 10 things that is a problem for you and we could solve so to make your job better. They don't do that stuff. Very few leaders do that. What leaders mostly do nowadays, right? And I'm sure, you know, you maybe this is the people you might be speaking to as well. But what they really do now is just market research. They go online and they say, okay, there's all these sites now, right? SAP versus this, and they do a comparison and they do listing and all this stuff, right? They do that. They read the brochure and then they pick a product. So that's, again, I think one of the issues.
I've done that kind of market research and a lot of that, and I can tell you that I mean it's only helpful in a context, but that context is very problem specific. One of the things which I realized, like when I was working in digital transformation project and I was working on with large companies and like end-to-end digital transformation, I realized that I was spending most of my time in working that how thing A will talk to thing B.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have all these companies, you have all these products, you have all these layers, like what kind of, and a couple of years back it was Wild West. I mean, like you put these two companies together, they have never worked with each other, and you will have like a workshops and whole day spending time to understand, okay, how these two companies are going to talk each other and they are going to plug their solutions together, and then you realize that when you put it together, something else is broken now.
Yeah.
So I realized like a lot of my time was actually spent in figuring it out, is how to put it together. And what happens in these exercises, that when you start having problems, you start trying to reduce your ambition. You say, okay, you wanted to do this, but since all of this cannot come together in the right time, so why don't we change it?
Yep.
And when you are in trenches, I mean, that's the normal thing to do. Management is breathing on your neck. I mean, they also want solutions. You share with them openly. But that's the thing I started realizing, that there has to be a better way to do it. And when I saw Palantir, at least I personally felt that it's quite a niche way of doing things. Okay, it's robust, it's fastest. And this is why I say, like, when there is a crisis, that is where Palantir shines. Like when the COVID thing happened and people needed some really sophisticated solution that can be deployed today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like testing. You don't need 20 days of workshop to figure it out how to put it together. I think most of the world, at least in the Western world, people turn to Palantir, and I don't think Palantir has disappointed them.
No, Sachin, you know why that might be actually, and again, I don't work there. I don't know the exact tech stack or anything like that, but just from speculation, I can tell you. So typically, early, before the 2000s, I mean, it was kind of there, but the protocol of speaking to other applications and stuff, right? It was mostly like SOAP and some other different methods and things like that, right? But ever since like 2010s is really when it got popular. But these APIs and stuff, right? Like the whole like post REST APIs and things like that. If you guys want to look it up, became big. So this is why everything can talk to anything. But of course, when you talk to something, you have to have certain structure that you pass to that thing. It's all function based. It's all like service oriented. So when you pass your request to the service, it needs to be structured in a certain way, and then you get back some stuff, and you do something with that. But what you're doing actually, right, if you actually think about it, is you're going outside of your application. So you're already increasing the time to communication, right? So in the 90s and in the 2000s, there were a lot of applications, including some of the large incumbents that we're talking about here, right? These guys had large monoliths, right? So when they had to go deploy a product, they would take like a CD, or they would have a forward deployed engineer, right? And then they would go and they would say, okay, we're going to install this in your system, but they'd bring their set of CDs or whatever the case is, or USB sticks, and they'll install it. It felt quite physically, right? Because it was just that large of a product. And then cloud-based came, and then everything was downloadable, of course. But I think what Palantir is doing is actually a flavor of both, in my opinion. What they're doing is they have a massive platform. It's not a monolith, most likely. If it is, then that's unbelievably crazy, the speed that they're achieving. But it's a monolith of a sort of like maybe a front end product, like what the analysts and stuff see. But the entire backend processes are all within their sort of domain for the most part. So that keeps the communications and all that stuff actually quite crisp and fast. So in a way, the whole dichotomy of the industry has changed in the sense that once cloud became a thing, this whole like Lambdas and all this from AWS, you can take your services from your monolith and you can split them up and put it in somewhere else, right? But then the problem is when everything talks to each other, they might be in different areas and all this other thing, right? From a technical perspective, so you're adding more time for communication. Whereas Palantir is saying, let's take all of it, we'll treat it as a monolith, we'll make it operate as a monolith so that it stays within the system. So that's why I think naturally it just comes out a lot faster. and a lot more sort of robust and concise there. So I think there's a lot of tech magic that happens there. I have an idea as to how they do it, but I'm still like working some of that out. So I know from personal experience building this kind of stuff out. When I had to, for example, talk from a CRM API, so Salesforce API, right, all the way. I had to talk to some like open source third party thing, and I had to build the software, like actually write the microservice that then goes into, for example, what was it? The Dynamics, right? Dynamics for Microsoft, and then pulls that data and then collates it into another database, and then that thing goes into some other inference engine. Like there's so much of this that happens in the back end that people don't understand, that Palantir is effectively crushed into one product and still made it efficient. That's why I think the engineers here are doing something really good. I have an idea, but I think they're just very good at being efficient at it. But the reality is there's like, even for one pipeline of a process, there's hundreds of things that can be a part of it. So they've moved that into one platform. So naturally it'll be faster.
No, I agree. I mean, since you are now discussing about the core portion of Palantir, I think it is good to discuss, because the term has been thrown for a lot of time, like what is data ontology? I mean, and I discussed it in past as well. I mean, and this is what this is what my version of. I'll explain what I mean by it, but this is what I understand, that because the term of data ontology is so new to a lot of data engineers, that they prefer to buy SQL solutions just to avoid that term. So this is what I have seen in industry in general. So what do you, I mean, how would you describe like data ontology to someone who is like entirely naive? Like, okay, I mean, if you go to the definitions and you can watch hundreds of YouTube videos, and I mean, there is very difficult to go explaining this term without entering into philosophy. So let's try to crack a couple of very simple definition for somebody who's very naive about this stuff.
For sure. I think, like you're saying, this, the school of thought is still out on data ontology. To be honest, I think it's quite simple. It's the way I think about it, and this could be wrong, but the way I think about it, it's basically, right now, data traditionally would be treated as like, what would be an analogy? It would be like a library, right? So when you're going through a database or something, it's a library. You have in your indexes, you have, your rows, columns, and all this stuff, and each piece of book or whatever is in that row, right? What I'm thinking of data ontology is actually, think about it as like the operating system of that library, right? So you're saying, yes, you can curate and put data where it needs to be, but what data ontology really is how that does that, because see, it's all contextual, right? So you could want a specific book because you're feeling to like reading a specific thing, but another day you could want that book for another reason altogether. You could say, oh yeah, because in chapter 4 I went through this and I read this and I like that chapter because of this context. But then on another day you could say, oh, in towards the conclusion of this book they were saying something and I want to go back and look at it. It's a different reason for getting the same book. Right. So in a way, that operating system of that library needs to be able to pull your book based on different requests, more or less, different contextual reasons. So I think the way I see it is basically that. I think it's taking your existing data stack and actually making it more contextual, so you can make decisions and you can pull things out as you need dynamically. And it's not just give me this book here now, right? It's more so like, I need something that gives me blah, 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 like a few different things. And then this particular OS or whatever the case is will say, okay, are these what you want? Right? And then someone else can say something totally contextually different and it'll have some similarities. But the idea is it's pulling based on something that's more dynamic rather than something static, like a database, for example.
I think that's quite. I think that will explain a lot. The way I see it, I mean, it's very simple. I say that, I mean, you have, like you mentioned, I mean, you have all these databases, and people who have merged databases, only they know what is the pain. That when you merge two databases, and then after 3 years, you again have to merge more databases to that. And now people are still doing that. I mean, a lot of people still does it. And so one of the things which I realized is that the data ontology, in my view, I mean, it's a kind of a tool that helps us put data in a frame that we can easily understand and actually act upon. I mean, the information. So it is basically the transfer of, or changing or transforming data into information. I mean, in practical sense, it's a conceptual model, because it's like putting a kind of that how different things actually interacts with each other. That's why it's dynamic. I mean, it's not like how it is built. If things change on one part of data, like for example, if there are new dimension and new relationships happening. So for example, like if I am working in energy industry and at this particular point, I mean, energy industry has a very conventional players.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But then what is happening is a lot of big tech industry starts generating their own renewable energy, and given the size of their data centers, I mean, if you start aggregating how much energy they are going to produce, they will be producing energy during this decade, which is going to be larger than uh, several prominent players.
Yeah,
So suddenly, like what happened, your landscape has changed, your competition and the solution space has changed. So your information has to adapt for it, and your information has to be ready for it. You're not going to create a new data set for it
100%. Yeah,
or new. So this is where, I mean, I believe, like, I mean, that's what I say, that this is where the, so it helps like organization and people understand that the relationship between different types of objects and data, like in parts of organization which literally don't connect with each other, and
yeah,
that's where the value comes in. And if you see, like for example, I mean, it's not a solution. I mean, like for example, you see Siri in iPhone. I mean, it's a data ontology. I mean, it learns from it,
yeah.
and it kind of talks to put things in a context. So transferring data into information, using them in a particular context, and keeping that context alive in a dynamic situation as things change. Okay. Like for example, I mean, if you ask Siri, like, should I take umbrella out, and it checks the weather, and next day, depending on the weather, the recommendation is different.
Yeah,
I think that is, to me, is very strong. Now, one thing is, okay, you like the concept, and many have attempted, I mean, doing this in different domains and different capacity, and but nobody has been able to do it in a more integrated way, in an industrial setting, in a very disparate data sources, as we have seen in the in the NSA community, and in the government domain, and in very large industry. I think this is what made me to think about is that what Palantir is doing and how it is doing is somewhat unique. I mean, I know that
but
the
it's
root
not
of,
worth it. It's not worth it. That's why.
yeah,
So I'll tell you exactly why. It's again, like, this is my opinion just based on the stuff I was doing, right? But like, to be honest with you, it just was never worth it. It has never became worth it. It was kind of the holy grail of data for a while, because see, this is what makes Palantir unique too, right? If you really think about it, when you really think about the government side of it, right? They grew from the government side of it. If you really think about it, the government doesn't change very fast. So it gives you a chance to say, okay, we're going to address data ontology, but we have a chance to, because there's not some dynamic thing that changes. All of a sudden you're going, and then the rug gets swept right under you, right? Nothing like that happens in the government. It's very slow. It's very meandering. And it gave Palantir a good chance. And this is what people don't understand. They're already there, right? They're already past so many stages that other companies are still struggling with. So being part of the government, they were able to see things from a like a 200-foot view and say, okay, this was the problem from the beginning, so let's address it. We have time. It's the government. They're not really going to change on us. So let's take this data. Let's test a whole bunch of different models that we have. And at some point, I think something clicked where they're like, okay, we can actually export this and do this for everybody. And that's why we're here now with this whole direct listing and all this, right? But I think the whole idea of them sitting with the government was one of the key factors of them being able to actually address this problem. And the reason why I said it wasn't worth it before was because this is the thing that gets talked about all the time. This is exactly why people have these ETL guys that get hired to pay. They get paid like $150,000 to just move tables around, right? Some of them are really good, but most of them, they basically use old, like 90s, 2000s era technology to do stuff that anybody can do, right? And part of that is because people have tried to say, okay, we have all this data, and going just from the data side, Sachin, like, databases are very static, and the whole reason for their existence is saying, okay, we don't know what it is, let's just log everything. We need a place that stores everything, and the only thing that's really sort of, it's a very structured system. So once the structure is in place, you can't exactly change it, right? So when you have a ton of these databases, people start realizing that, oh crap, like, how would we know what we need from each database? And the whole database technology tried to do this when they introduced joins and all this, right? But it doesn't translate to the operation side of it. It only translates from the store procedure or from the database tech side of it. So for it to translate to the data, or the analysts and like the operations and the business operations side of things, you need a whole bunch of stuff. right? So it just never became worth it, because then when you got into meeting groups and said, okay, guys, let's translate this database into decisions, people would say, oh, no, we think it's this. No, we think it's this. And oh, no, this is it becomes a human problem. And if you actually go on Palantir's website, they see this. They mention this all the time. Like in almost every text, they're like, "We're solving a human problem." There's always a human aspect of it, right? And it's funny because everyone is trying to do all this AI stuff where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna make a machine just completely do everything." Sure, why don't you show me first that you can do that, right? Whereas Palantir is like, "Okay, no, we'll do models and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, this is a human problem, so let's solve that first." So again, being in the government, I think they were able to develop this pretty rapidly, actually, given the time frame. And I think now they're just releasing it onto the commercial side, which is why I think they have no competition. But anyway, yeah, it was just never worked before, Sachin.
Let me share, some of the things which I encountered during my my DD. I think I have never shared these things before. I think one of the things I realized, like in the early 1970s, when the strong AI movement came, it was all embedded in ontology, and the movement failed because people failed to crack the sweet sauce for ontology. And few people knows that actually the lot of digital ontology or data ontology actually evolved in the bio domain. Like biopharma, where people are working on the genomic mapping and all that. And you know why it worked? Because in the biology, in the genome, people had this kind of hierarchy and relationship structures. And it was very important to build what kind of relationship. If it's an animal, if it's a mammal, like what connects across different species. So there was like a whole movement that happened. All the development that we talk about in terms of generalized AI, in whichever way we look at, it is based on data ontologies. It's different how it is done. Some are good, some are bad, some have failed, some are succeeding over it. But at the end of the day, because see, even if you look like the autonomous car and everything, what people are trying to read, people are trying to understand the data, apply the context, extract the information, and then take the action. That's pretty much like what any AI is trying to do. Okay. And it is so if people are in data engineering domain, if they really think or they feel uncomfortable with this term, I think it's time to update and get to know more about it, because this is where more and more solutions are going to live. I'll tell you something funny things I came across different projects I did. So there was like this, I got a call from one of my client at, it was like 1 month back, and it's a bit of rush, very senior guy, and he said, I need someone very good in COBOL.
COBOL? Wow.
I said, do you know someone in COBOL? I said, I know a guy. He said, who is this? I said, there was a guy with me in my engineering college. He joined TCS, and when I went to see him in Bombay, I asked him what project you are doing, and like he said, I'm working in COBOL. And I told this guy, dude, it's obsolete. So this is I'm telling during my college days. Now this guy is coming to me 2 months back, and then he explained me that a lot of his banking systems and all, actually they never changed, they stayed in COBOL.
Yeah, all of them are still like that.
Yeah, so finding the guy, so I helped him. Like whatever resources I have, to find the guy and to I don't know because I haven't signed the NDA like how the project is going. But the another thing, now this is a big solution in big industry, and it's been bragged as one of the best. And I was discussing with the digital team there, and they were showing like the solution has been brought on cloud. What do you think about it? I said the solution was written in a small talk. That was the first object-oriented programming from the early 1980s. The kind of GL libraries we are talking, I said, they don't exist. So yeah, you have put the container around it, you have put it, but what's the end game here? I know everything cannot be built on cloud. A lot of things has to be lift and shift, but it doesn't mean everything has to be lift and shift. So I saw that there's a lot of gap at times when people are trying to solve these things. And the third one is the biggest awakening moment for me. So this is a very large company. Now I'm talking of a company which was worth over $100 billion for a very long time.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe they're still $100 billion above. I need to check. So in this particular company, what happened is they said they have a problem, and the problem is following. They say we build some of the best solutions in the energy domain, but by that time we roll it out to our company, market has a better solution.
Yep.
So I said, what's the problem? The problem is that they take too long.
Yep.
Okay, now these are real problems in real industries. Okay, you need to build these solutions that is up to date. That's why your CI/CD and DevOps becomes very important. You
Oh
need
my God,
solutions which are integrated, because it's not like this. Like I worked with several solutions during my seismic interpretation reservoir modeling domain. Every software has a different way of loading the data, QA/QC, plotting things, and it was a learning curves associated with it. Why it doesn't have to be different? So you need a consistent platforms around it. It has to be integrated. So this is why I say that I always felt, and like my own SaaS solutions which I'm trying to look is actually entirely focused on this. That a lot of things which I saw in the energy industry that can be done in a lot of different. I said that how much time waste is there. I mean, if you just start cutting these simple activities and put it like one frame and one solution around it, you actually save a lot of time and money at the end of the day. And these are real problems, and these are real industries. And so this is why I kind of believe like what Palantir does and how it is trying to do. So let's make a segue to our next section. Is what do you think? I mean, what's the future of Palantir? I mean, it's a good solution is one part. Being in bed with government is another part. Is fine, but do you think is it? I mean, can they really grow?
Good question. So for me, like I'm not like I'm super bullish on the company, of course, but I always try to be as realistic as possible and as objective as possible, right? So let me start with what I'm expecting for like how they're gonna grow, and then we'll talk about like maybe products and clients and stuff. But I think so. My whole take on this is that the product maturity is very, very, very mature. Like it's very high, and people are underestimating the level of the type of product that they're pushing out to clients. Most of the time, like I mentioned before, most other companies offer a narrow product, so you need to do a ton of professional services, which, by the way, guys, is usually what they're calling this consulting wing or whatever, right? Where you have to sit with some developers and they're like, oh no, yes, we can do this, no, we can do this, now you got to pay more and all this stuff, right? I'm sure Palantir has that too, but their base product that they're deploying is quite mature. Like you may or may not need to go through any other engineering to get anything else done. Now, the issue now for me, and I made this very clear in all my videos, I think they need to get ahead of it in terms of the sales and marketing side of it. Because, in my take, there's basically three pillars to success in the IT world, right? There's product, sales, and marketing. So if your product is good, and it's tough because no company is good at all three, but it all goes in cycles. Like, if some companies are better at marketing at that moment, some companies are better at product that more, it's very cyclical like that. So right now, I think it's high time for sales and marketing to they start onboarding good salespeople, good marketing people, and start pushing out the content. Target the right folks who are trying to. And I think right now, actually, their targeting for their marketing side is quite broad because people like me have been getting ads for Palantir, which is kind of pointless, right? Like if they can target better, then that would be good too. But anyway, that's more constructive criticism. But for me, sales and marketing needs to step up 100%. Because in the tech world, I think, Sachin, we both know this, the best products don't always win. So, it's not, yeah, like there's so many guys, like, if for those of you who don't know, in the industry right now, there's so many products that are industry standards that have not been the best product, right? So they've either muscled their other products, either in my opinion, in one of these three pillars, whether it's product, sales, or marketing. So, it's very important for Palantir to do this. I know they have deep sort of roots in government and all this stuff. I think their base is good. Like they have good fundamentals and all this stuff, right? But for them to get in the eyes of business people, for them to get in the eyes of decision makers in the enterprise SaaS world and stuff, they need to push this out, man. Because once people see this, it's a super sticky product. That's what I think. In my opinion, I think once people get a demo or whatever, and even the demos are going to be so easy to onboard, right? Usually, and this is underrated. Most of the people, they say, like when they come in, they'll give you a demo or something, and they'll put it on their site. Like they'll put it on their cloud. They'll spin up some VMs and they'll put it there. And even that's kind of sucks most of the time for other offerings. But Palantir, it seems like even their demos are pretty good. I'm sure they're using mock data and all this stuff, but whatever. So that's one thing. I'm looking for sales and marketing to push. The second thing is, I think the industries that they're going to go towards in the next, because right now their initiative is almost like building like an ecosystem as a service, right? So they're not building one product for one company. They're building one product for a line of companies, for a set of companies, for companies that have sort of similar goals and stuff like that, right? Even if they are competing with each other, with the whole Hyundai and Merck and what's the other one, Skywise, for example, right? So that's one vertical that they're doing. But I think another one that they can address is probably banking. If they can touch on anything, and this goes back to your COBOL situation, right, Sachin? So like, if they can touch anything in banking, it's going to be huge, because these guys are basically massive wells of first party data, right? So like, especially when they have tons of clients, they're basically a stalwart. People have to go to banks. So then banks are naturally just sucking up all this data, and they have absolutely no idea or no business process or nothing to do with it. I know this. I know this for sure. So I think that's one big thing that they can address. Actually, some folks in my comments say this all the time, like, oh, I'm in banking. I really think Palantir can do a really good job here. And some of them are like analysts at that level. So I think that's one sector they could probably do. In terms of revenue, like, I'm not too crazy. I'm not like, I know some things, but I'm not like a super expert on like the financial side of it. But I'm going to stick to what like Alex Carp is talking about, which is the whole 30% year over year kind of thing, right? I think, to be honest, it's a little bit conservative, especially right now, but I'll take it. I'll take 30% over your typical, index investing or whatever. So I look for that as sort of a benchmark, but I'm more looking for, because this is SaaS, right, Sachin? So like, if they can build and do R&D and build more products, I think it's going to be like network effects in the future. It's going to almost be kind of like Amazon when they were building factories, when they were building their distribution centers and all this. They weren't making too much money, and they were just doing the process of actually getting the land and all this stuff there. So I think Palantir is at that stage where they're building their product, the maturity is increasing, and they're getting into different sort of sectors. Once these things click, once people start using them, it's the profits are going to come in. It's going to be unreal.
No, I agree. I mean, even if they do like 4 billion as per the COP timeline, and even if they reach that number somewhere in next few years, I mean, with a PS of 25, that is still like $100 billion company.
Yeah, okay.
And to be honest, if that happens, I'll be disappointed. But that's, to me, that still is just like quite a viable scenario that is possible. So one of the thing which I realize is that, I mean, like so I totally agree with you. Like, the sales part has to go up, and have been very vocal about it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy, like, the efforts they have made in beefing up their sales team over the last year. I think that's in the right direction, because, like, for example, just purely based on relationships, you can help, I mean, so much in business.
Oh man, it's
and
all relationships.
Whatever people I interacted with Palantir sales team, actually, I was very impressed. I mean, they were very clean, very clear in terms of offering, like, what's the proposition is, what not. I mean, I like a lot their go-to-market strategies at Alok. Yeah. I mean, there were times like I reached for information and for help, and I mean, these people, they come back to you. I mean, and they offer whatever they can help. So
they better. Like, as a shareholder, I really do want them to push it. Like, I don't
so
care.
That only confirmed me, like, the commitment they have. I think few things which I'm very keen to see. My view is, like, they need to release like a Foundry Carbon module as a whole focused offering. I mean, like, even like, I know it exists and they are doing it, is because, see, I work in energy and ESG space. I'm seeing the addressable market in that domain, and few people realize that at this particular time, the net zero 2050 problem is a data problem, because polluters report themselves how much they are polluting.
Yeah.
And in order, like, people say that if I say to go to a company and a company says that we want to go net zero by 2050, the first question is, what is your footprint today? What is the cost of removing that footprint? So it's a data problem to start with.
Gotcha.
Okay, like COP26, everyone said that 130 trillions of business and government's activity has committed for sustainability and climate. 1% of that is 1.3 trillion. I mean, if I take 0.1%, that is 130 billion. So people are not realizing that, and if you are going to address 130 trillion, you will likely spend 0.1% money to understand what the problem is. So the TAM that is in that market, my understanding, it's huge. And since it's so complicated, see, this is where you see the situation that happened in the time of NHS and COVID. I mean, there are times when there is no alternative of excellence. That if you fail by 1%, you lose the battle. And that was exactly what was happening at the time, of course. So same thing, like in the issue of compliance and estimating your net zero and your carbon footprint, if you make a miscalculation and misfiring, the way the regulations are changing, you would be exposed for very heavy fines, and the consequences will be very heavy. So just the kind of urgency Palantir brings to the table and the kind of solution, I think that is something they need to develop the effort as much as they should be.
Yeah.
And I think the one of the challenge that people have faced over the time is, and Palantir has faced over the time, is that we have built this juggernaut of things which can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But people don't know what to do with it. People don't have access to it. So if you could put some of these pieces together and offer it as a dedicated solution, to me, I think that is something they need to do. And I'm certain in my mind that at this particular point, the growth is self-constrained. The reason for that is, see, when you build, like, for example, you see the program like Foundry for Builders. I can imagine like thousands of starters would like to use it, but it can only come and if you know somebody, if you have. So it is telling that they know and they exactly want to grow in this space, but they do not have resources to actually support it at that level. So this is to me, this is a sign that they are constrained in one way, and these constraints are self-imposed. Okay, like for example, if you want to do a startup package on Snowflake, you can go online and sign it. I mean, I know it's a minuscule solution compared to what we are talking about, but in terms of reach and in terms of self-servingness, I mean, this is where I see that the company Snowflake, it is growing, it is expanding as the market is expanding.
Oh, Snowflake will do much better. Yeah, they would do much better in this because they offer a narrow solution, right? Whereas Palantir offers a full thing, so they would need people to manage it. I can see where you're coming from. Yeah.
So this is where, I mean, this is one thing which I really want them to address at some point of time is, and I'm a big believer, like a lot of time, I mean, I've been on the people side of the people where people are buying things.
Yeah.
And people buy things what they know. They don't buy the best. They don't put efforts to figure out sometime what is the best. So if people don't know, like for example, even if I go for my SaaS, I mean, if I cannot use Foundry, eventually I will build things on what is offered to me.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the packages that is offered by the big techs to startup, and of course, I've been in industry, so I have contacts. So they have been a bit generous to me in terms of offering that has been made. Yeah. Eventually, I will take some of that.
Of course, yeah. No, I understand.
So this is where I see like this is the money that is left on table at this particular point. I hope they don't leave this money on table for too long.
Me too. Yeah.
And this is where I say like at this particular point, their growth, and this is why I'm not very happy with the growth of 30% and 40%, because in my view, that growth represents those constraints. Because if you, and I mean, I work in the industry, I know the industry, my understanding is that once companies and organizations start looking beyond the current use cases, because once you have data solutions working, data platform working, and an organization is kind of building an intermediate maturity, like how data can be used, people will use it in so many different ways that even we cannot envisage at this particular time. And that particular time, it becomes a kind of a situation where data expenditure will come on the steroids. I mean, people say, oh, we are spending this much. My understanding is that whatever we are spending in the data domain, I think it will go 5x to 10x within this decade only. So when that happens, how they are placed to take their advantage, I think to me that's the biggest thing to look for.
That's fair. But Sachin, do you think maybe the percentage that we're looking at coming from the company, right, could be, you know, more indicative of them taking it back to R&D, for instance, right? Because some of these products, like, we're not going to know what Athenia is going to do, not for probably like 2-3 years now. Skywise has released some good numbers, but That was more of a direct problem since we had some airline issues, in the past few years thanks to COVID, right? But things like Athenia, all these supply chain problems that they're trying to solve, like I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I feel like we won't see this kind of like the actual results of it snowball not till maybe like 3-4 years. That's why I'm saying it's tough for me to peg anything on growth. Like you would know, I think you addressed some really good points there. But for me, it's like if I see something that's like kind of fishy in terms of how they're not growing as fast or something, I would first start looking to the product side of it. So if I see the product side of it is the same, that would be a huge red flag for sure. Like I think that you're addressing that.
I
too.
agree. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that's fair interpretation. I agree with
Yeah.
that. My view is like once things starts happening in the commercial domain, I think it will be difficult to hide. Like in government, you can hide for 20 years, even 100 years, like what you are doing.
Yeah.
Like once you start working with more and more clients in commercial domain, I think news starts getting out. Okay, what you are doing. So I would expect
Absolutely.
more, and I'm pretty sure that they're building more products for government also, because U.S. government. I mean, there have been discussion like to increase the AI spending by $25 billion. So I believe like Palantir has a seat on the table. So I mean, personally, and like I said, I mean, it's a SaaS model. By nature, it will have a good operating margin in general. So my focus is more on the revenue part here, that how fast the clients are growing,
Fair enough.
how
Fair enough.
fast the revenue is growing in that part.
I would love to learn
So
more about it. Maybe I'll do some more digging. I'll reach out to you if I get confused or something.
so let's move to the next part. I think this is one of the most important part and kind of summarize everything we have discussed. Is see, what are the risks in Palantir? I mean, what do you think? I mean, like for example, like one of the risks I always mention and I always maintain is that um, Palantir is not a typical Silicon Valley company. Palantir founder Peter Thiel has been very open in support for Trump. So people like it, people don't like it, but there is a majority of people in Silicon Valley and in the left-leaning community that they see Palantir not as a part of their club. So they are
Right.
forced to hate it. They are forced to say bad things about it, and they are forced to create FUD about it, without realizing that how important its role could be in US in general, and it is something that goes beyond the party politics, but it's a risk. I mean, and somebody who lives outside US, I mean, I treat it as a risk, and I believe that it will keep Palantir discounted for a very long time.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think that's definitely there for me. Like, honestly, this whole politics thing is just, in my opinion, it's just totally stupid. I think for me, you do what you do. You put your vote where it counts. It's up to you, right? But like to label it as a company wide thing, it's kind of weird. And also, while we're on the topic, so I'll tell you what my risks are, and then I'll address that whole Peter Thiel thing, because this has been coming up. Like, I got to make a video on this, but anyway. So my risk for me is product maturity for sure. I think okay, they might be the type of company that could potentially burn faster than like those who shine brightest also burn the fastest, right? So I don't want them to like blow their load with just Foundry, for instance, right? Foundry is a fantastic product. Apollo is fantastic. Gotham is really good too. All these things are great, but yes, I want them to grow it, but I don't want them to stop putting money into R&D. Like I want to see tech. I want to see like hackathons and that kind of stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, they're a high tech company. They can't operate the way they did in the government. Like I think you were alluding to that too, right? So yes, you're coming from a government background, but if you're going to play in high tech, and I addressed this in my competition video, because people are always saying, like, with this whole Tesla stuff that's been happening now, right? People are always comparing it to Palantir and stuff. Forget comparisons. If you're starting from the competition side of it, right? Like big tech is not big auto. Big tech, they have some heavy hitters, right? And if they want to move fast, they can move
I agree.
very fast, right? If they really wanted to, they can do it absolutely fast, right? The difference is though, the reason they don't do it is because their clients require what they're already offering. So why even try? Right? So it almost leaves the door open for Palantir. But then once they come in, if they're going to poke the bear, they need to be able to put up, right? So they need to have this product growth. They need to have this cycle growth that you can. You don't have to be able to fully predict it, but you need to see it somewhere, right? Like I don't want to be here next year and not hear about anything different than we've already heard, because that would be a really big problem. So for me, it's the maturity of the actual like offering set, or at least some form of like adoption rate. Like I want to see an adoption rate increase or something, right? The second risk for me is actually this whole sales thing. I know I keep hinging on this. It might be very one dimensional. The reason I say that is because, to be honest, like hiring good salespeople is very, very difficult. Very difficult. It's almost as difficult as hiring like great engineers. Just because you need that relationship. When you're hiring a salesperson, you're actually bringing in their relationships, right? You're not really hiring the person. You're bringing in their like relationships. You're bringing in their industry experience and all this other stuff. So it's almost a little more important than hiring an engineer, because engineers just work with code and we can always do it wherever we go. But salespeople, they've worked in decades building these relationships with people, and most of them are with people that make these decisions, right? So if you bring them on board, you're almost increasing that time to make decisions much faster to pick your product over someone else's. I think the third thing would probably be, this is a list of stuff that I put as risks, but actually so with the Peter Thiel thing, this has been coming up a lot. People have been asking me about it. Just so we're clear, guys, like if Peter Thiel says, oh, we want to do a monopoly, we want to do this, right? Let's be honest, it's just Peter Thiel saying that, right? I don't want to,
I agree, totally agree.
The company has to execute. I don't understand why there's this whole obsession with Peter Thiel, Alex Karp. They're great leaders. I'm not saying they're not that great, but like, Peter Thiel and Alex Karp are not the only ones working at the company, right? Like they're like, just because Peter Thiel says something in 0 to 1 doesn't mean that the company is not going to do that or going to do that. It really comes down to the staff of the company to actually go and sit there and execute, right? And the last, and this I would associate this as the biggest risk, to be honest with you, right? And this is the thing that scares me about this company. Will people actually want to pick it even if it's a better product? So by this I mean, Sachin, say for example, you're like a product manager at some big tech company, right? If I'm a salesperson from Palantir and I come to you and I say, okay, look, man, like here's a demo, here's what you got. I already mocked some data for you to reflect something that you're used to. So why don't you just go play with it? Go play with the software, see what it is, and let me know what you think. You go and do it. You say, listen, Shabri, this is a fantastic product. I think it's great. Everything is good, but we already have our SAP modules. Oh no, we already have our Salesforce CRM. I think we're good. We don't need this stuff, right? Like, how much of door knocking do these guys have to do for them to actually get their product to a point where it'll sell? Because me and you both know it's sticky. The product is sticky, yeah. But who's going to be the first domino, right? Right now, the first dominoes are all kind of small players. Airbus is a big one, but the most of them are kind of like small to medium, kind of obscure here and there. Like, we know, I'm 100% sure nobody's heard of Merck before they released this deal, and if you're not invested in Palantir, right? So, like, at least I haven't. So for me, it's like they need one big fish. If they can reel in one big fish, it is going to completely topple the industry, in my opinion, right? So that's why I'm focusing on that side more, because it's like I've lived and breathed tech this whole time, and I think we both know this, but the viewers may not know this. The best product does not always win, guys. So they need to actually peddle this stuff and make sure that at least they can sell one big contract to a big, like, known player, like a stalwart or something. That would go such a long way. So for me, that's a risk. It's like this adoption rate needs to increase like crazy, because me and you can talk to the cows come home about how good the product is. But at the end of the day, the people that actually make the decisions for these big companies, they need to also see that vision, right? So I don't know how that's going to happen, whether it's some kind of like relationship or partnership or whatever, but I'm waiting for that big fish, the big domino, one big domino to fall.
No, I agree. I mean, and completely in line with that. I mean, this was said that the execution is something which I always kept as a highest risk for myself in Palantir. And I mean, I do have my own opinion on this. Like when people compare like Tesla versus Palantir.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, people say like, oh, Tesla stayed long for so long, and then what kind of? See, when Tesla, if you see between 2015 to 2019, the period everyone mentioned, Tesla was going against an incumbent industry which hasn't changed or hasn't done literally anything for decades in terms of disruption. The second thing is, like, when even at that particular point, Tesla had higher valuation than any other auto player. Okay, right. This is why people hated Tesla, because a lot of people hated Tesla because they just missed the investment, and then they always thought it as an auto company. But the thing is, So this is not true in case of Palantir. Palantir is not the leading valuation in data industry as of today. First, second is it is not still the fastest growing company in the data industry as well. The third is it is in the industry, as you mentioned, which has players which are not as static as the incumbents in the EV versus Tesla were. They are very dynamic. They can put, they have a lot of money. They have a lot of knowledge. They have a lot of reach to the customer. So this when I see like Palantir,
their talent sync too. Sorry, Sachin. Like this is what people don't understand. These big tech companies, they're not like Big Auto, like you're saying, right? But in one way, that's more important is that they're not like Big Auto in the sense of engineers. Engineers want to work here. People don't specifically want to work at Ford or GM, even before Tesla became big. You know what I mean? Like they would, for Palantir to be competitive in this space, on top of the fact that Fang and all these big tech companies are massive talent sinks. I personally know people that work here that do nothing, right? Just because they got a job. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like on top of them being a talent sink, they can move really fast if they want to. They just don't do it because they make money off of their current models.
No, I agree. The only dimension at which I find Palantir and Tesla on the same ground is both companies attract a lot of unnecessary FUD. So this is where I find both companies on the same ground, and but yeah, I mean Tesla has done things and achieved things which are far greater and far beyond. I mean at this particular point, I mean if Palantir has to claim that kind of greatness and destiny, I think they need to pull a lot of weight. I believe they can in a way, but yeah, I mean, like I said, execution cannot be taken for granted.
No, for sure.
I mean, like if you have to take something for granted, you will probably go with Elon Musk. I mean, he has SpaceX. He has, I mean, if he says something, is yeah. So, I mean, so the thing is like same thing like you mentioned. I mean, there is a playbook, there is a roadmap, there is a go-to-market strategy, there is a product, but it has to happen. And until that has happened, yeah, I mean, there is a risk. We just cannot move
No,
away
I'm with
from
you
it.
there. With you there, 100%.
And this is where I mean, like, for example, like when I looked at Snowflake, and like I said, I maintained it like that. I like the company because their focus is different. Their focus is simple. Their strategy is different. And eventually, like what will happen is they will also don't have option because their valuation has swelled so much that they literally have to go for vertical expansion. And given the timing they have, like when they don't have 17 years to build product like that anymore.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of inorganic growth in the Snowflake at some point of time. And yeah, I mean, and how well they integrated. Eventually, they will also try to become exactly one-to-one what Palantir is. I don't see, I mean, I see a good showdown, and hopefully both companies pull each other in a direction where both grows, and the market eventually and customers, everyone is benefited out of it.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. It's the battle is definitely ahead of us. I don't think it's here yet. I've addressed this too, and honestly, people fight me on this point, but I don't like. We're not here to pump the stock or anything. We're just trying to be realistic, right, and be objective about it. And the truth is, once Palantir starts understanding or getting into the same addressable market as some of these people, the same things that they're doing, they better be ready for a fight. I think they'll be okay. Like I think they're competitive enough to survive like quite a few blows. The question is going to be, what are the other incumbents going to do? Because I know the engineering talent at Palantir is fantastic. Like to be honest, Sachin, like for them to build that kind of product that they did, just from what I can see, I have confidence in the product side of it. So I think they can fight. That's fine. But I'm with you all the way in the other stuff. It's like, you know, there's so much to be proven still with this company. I'm treating it as a like a future company that we're going to start seeing grow rather than believing grow. You want to start seeing it. And I think there's going to be a time where it's going to be like a floodgate moment where there is going to be one domino fall. I mean, we can't be sure, but I know for a fact that if one of those dominoes fall, the product is so sticky, you're going to, and you know, the market is competitive too. These guys will say, okay, if you're going to go with this product, what is this product? Hey, you go search this product and let me know what it is, right? And all of a sudden the floodgates will open. I think that moment will come, but they have a bunch of stuff to prove before then, I think.
No, I agree. I mean, I think this is nice time also. I think for us to summarize the discussion in journal, like, and what are the different things we think will be looking and could be
Yeah,
important for anyone who is following Palantir as an investment. I mean, and I'll be honest. I mean, like, I'm not in position, and I don't want to pump any stock,
yeah,
be it Palantir, be it anyone. But my idea is like, this is how I think about it. This is
absolutely,
what I like about it. This is why I invested in it. And tomorrow, if I sell it, this is why I sell it. I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah,
beyond a point, I mean, I literally have no emotions on that part. I mean,
yeah,
Palantir is just one of my investment. It's a big investment. I mean, I keep very concentrated portfolio. So, and in equity domain, I mean, especially in public equity domain, I don't maintain large portfolio.
yeah, yeah,
So Palantir covers a lot of it. Most of my investments are in private. I mean, be it Klarna, be it SpaceX. I mean, Atai has now come into public domain. So Atai goes from private to sorry, private to public now. But yeah, I mean, Palantir is something I believe in it, and I believe industry need it, people need it, in order to get things done. Because respective whatever we are discussing, I've been in industry, I've seen major capital project, I have seen large amount of data in my life. It's
yeah.
mess. It's a real mess, and
Oh yeah,
people really need help on that.
it's a dump. It's a dump for sure. Yeah.
Tell me, I mean, anything final summary you wanna capture before we close the show?
No, I think you touched on it, Sachin. To be honest, I think we're on the same page in that. Just for the viewers that are watching, like we're all trying to be objective here. That Palantir is a fantastic company. I think we truly believe in the mission that they're going forward with. I absolutely believe in their tech. I think it is absolutely revolutionary. But I'm not stupid. I work in the industry. I know that the best tech doesn't always win, and there's other things that are involved rather than just making a product. So I'm looking forward to what are going to come in the years. I still think it's a fantastic investment as it currently stands, but we're just sharing our opinions on it. And I think, like Sachin was mentioning, and I was saying before, there's so much left to be proven for Palantir to get to that point where we can comfortably say, yeah, this is absolutely going to crush. I think a lot of us that are saying that, we're looking at the product, we're looking at, and we're comparing it to existing products, and rightfully so. Existing products don't exactly match one to one, and Palantir as a whole is in a class of its own. So now, as I was alluding to before, we'll see which domino falls, and that's really what I'm waiting to. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the sales cycles and adoption growth. But yeah, I mean, on a personal note, Sachin, I think like, if those of you guys who are watching from my side, you got to follow this guy, man. Like, you want an objective, you know, view on your investments and stuff. If you base it on emotions and stuff, it's gonna suck. And I think Sachin has some good views on it. He goes into quite a bit detail on some of that stuff. So just on that front, I really want to appreciate you having me on, Sachin.
No, I mean, to be honest, I learned a lot from your side. I mean, some of the things you mentioned, because you come from a technical angle, so the way you can explain some of the nuances that are related with the Palantir deployment, I think people don't understand on the a lot of people who are following it, and even I don't get to do, because I work a lot on, because my role was more on the strategy and the implementation and large project, rather
Yeah.
than, it's been a while since I was sitting in front of computer myself doing things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think so. I really appreciate for the contribution you bring to the community, and I mean, all of us are learning from each other, and I think you brought some angles which were quite unique and nobody has shared it before. So I think the value you bring to the community is huge, and I hope to stay connected. And yeah, I mean, let's see how this journey goes in next few years. Really appreciate for your time today, man.
Thanks, Sachin. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll be sticking around. I'm sticky like Palantir's product. I'll bug you for some stuff.
No, I mean, feel free.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would really request, I mean, anyone who is watching it, if is make sure that you follow him on the Twitter, and follow his YouTube channel. If Palantir is one of the key positions you are looking, I will leave the link in the comments below. And yeah, I mean, just stay safe, and everyone, I think see you next time.
See you guys next time.
Okay.
Thanks, Sachin.
Take care. Bye, man. Really appreciate for your time.
Thanks for your time, Sachin. Thanks. Catch you guys later.